I am the founder and CEO of Pumpkin Futz. I'm sitting in for Shanique today, for Shanique Rees, and she is fine. She will be back next week. There have been a couple of these that, because of my position or my interest or my experience, we've thought I would be, I asked her if she'd be okay if I hosted. So she was gracious enough to let me talk to our two guests today. We have one of them so far, Nancy Morris, and her husband, Jason Morris, will be joining us in a moment. But before we move forward, let me just first say thank you. Thank you very much to all of our essential workers right now, all of the people who are allowing the rest of us to work from home, who are keeping us safe, the medical workers, the grocery store workers, the delivery people, the UPS men and women. We thank all of you every day for what you're doing for the rest of us to allow us to all be safe through this pandemic. I also want to add, Rebecca Schwartz has been doing a fun thing on Fridays in thanking parents. I thank parents and caregivers who right now are doing double duty as parents and homeschoolers and everything else they have to do, working or keeping us all, again, sane and fed through this pandemic. So thank you all very much. We are going to be speaking with Jason and Nancy Morris today from Two Sparrows. I want to let you all know that this broadcast will be ASL interpreted, and that will be available in the next 48 hours in the same place on our Facebook feed. We also will be taking questions. You feel free to ask questions in the comment space throughout the presentation, and we will pick them up. They come into us about 20 seconds delayed. So if it seems like you've asked a question and we've moved on, don't worry, we'll try and circle back and get to it. Go ahead and add your questions or comments for Nancy and Jason. So with that, I am going to go ahead and introduce Nancy Morris. I know Jason is still trying to reach us. That's one of the fun things about doing everything differently right now, is that we sort of roll with the punches, and Jason, I know, is having some trouble connecting to us, but we did want to talk to Jason and Nancy today about the idea of starting a business during this crisis, making lemonade from lemons. And so Nancy, if you could just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and Two Sparrows, what they do, we'll start with you.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks so much for having us, Lisa. We really appreciate it, and we're so excited to be doing this Wednesdays at noon with you. Hi, everybody. My name's Nancy Morris. My current position, full-time job, in addition to being co-owner of Two Sparrows Learning Systems with my husband, Jason, I'm an assistant professor of education. I teach in higher ed. I was a special education teacher for 10 years, early childhood special ed. And I am the creator of Effortless Art Crayons. And so Effortless Art Crayons are one of our products that we sell through Two Sparrows. Two Sparrows is the company that my husband and I founded about 3 years ago. And we have three basic arms to our company. We have a product line, Effortless Art. We have a product design and development service. And we also have an online marketplace where we sell other adaptive products. And that's the most recent or new development with our company. And I could tell you about who Jason is. He's not here yet.
Why don't you go ahead?
So Jason, he is a mechanical engineer by background, by trade. So he has about 15 years in the engineering field, and he mainly has been working in product design and development through most of his career. So in the beautiful marriage of education teacher meets, engineer, we're able to take best of both worlds, to not only create products, but to use our expertise to help others create products and take them along that product development journey.
Cool. Well, I will tell everyone watching that I met you both at the AOTA in New Orleans I believe, last year. And I have sent several occupational therapists your way, and they report that they've been really happy working with you. So I'd like to share that with the audience, that we met you, we had done a presentation on how to take a product from an idea to the marketplace. And so several people had approached me. We find that a lot of occupational therapists, in fact, I've never met an occupational therapist that doesn't have a product idea. Yes. And they don't have the background sometimes to be able to take that idea and bring it to the marketplace. And so we had talked about it at the AOTA. So as I mentioned, several people had come and approached us, and we sent them to you, and we followed up with them, and they've all reported really wonderful things. So I think, and I know several of them have had products that are now in the marketplace and for sale. So we've actually seen how the process has gone. So it's been really fun. It's been fun to get to know you, and also to know that you're a resource that we can send people to. So I know that Jason had talked to me last time. Oh yay! Look at that! As it was you. That was magic, because I just said
perfect. Sent down from the gods.
I know, perfect.
How are you doing, Lisa?
I'm good, Jason. How are you?
Good, thank you.
I was just saying that when we spoke a week ago, you had mentioned, or 2 weeks ago, you had mentioned to me that this is a perfect time to start a new company. And it seems so counterintuitive that now would be the time one would do that. Can you sort of say a little more about why that is, and tell us how one might sort of approach that in this time?
Sure, absolutely. Well, as everyone's really acknowledging, is our lives have changed dramatically. And there's been anytime there's a lot of upheaval is a great time for new opportunities. I guess I'll borrow a quote from her book. From great opportunities come great moments. And that's exactly where we are right now. We're seeing new opportunities that were never there before a few weeks ago. So we're looking at people are really interested in how do you sanitize products, for example. So there's a whole new industry of people that are now focused on that. That looks like for time, for the foreseeable future, that will be an industry that's of interest to people. Same thing for if you want to go more towards a service-oriented business. There's a lot of delivery service or logistics of how do we move goods around where we don't have a lot of physical contact with people. There's two examples really that come to mind for me. And actually, for our own story, when we started our effortless art products with our crayons, I was actually in between jobs. And I was like, well, I'll never have this much time again to really zoom in and focus on what it takes to get it up and running as quickly as possible.
And Jason and I were talking last night just about the number of companies that were launched in, times of economic crisis or economic downturn. The number of companies like Shopify was one that was launched, from the ground up in a time similar to this, where people were out of work, out of jobs, and from those conditions oftentimes are where companies grow or new ideas are formed, like Jason was saying.
I totally agree. It's interesting because when you mentioned that you were between jobs, that's exactly how my husband and I started Pumpkin Futz, was that David was between jobs, and it was impossible to get his attention or his time to do technology stuff for this, except because he was between jobs. And so it just turned out to be a sort of kismet moment. But it's very interesting that you should say that. I also love the idea that there are all these new opportunities right now, new services, new products that are coming out of new needs that are being created right now. So maybe, Nancy, if you could tell us a little bit about how do you help a business comes to you, or a person comes to you with an idea about a service or a product. How do you help them decide, or what should my decision-making process be as to whether or not that opportunity is worth pursuing?
Sure. I think that first you have to see, well, are there other products or services similar, to what my idea is out there. You have to get an idea of if the market has already a lot of product ideas or product examples out there, similar to yours, or if it's saturated, if it's already chock full of different types already, and you won't be able to differentiate yourself too much. I would suggest to people or talk to them or ask them, have you just done a Google search of your product idea? Have you looked, do you know who else is making this, is selling this yet? If they're a therapist, have you looked in the product catalogs? Have you gone to, TheraPro? Have you looked to see, what's out there and done a basic search so far? And, if they have, then I would ask, well, what makes your product different or service different? What are you going to do differently? Do you have a better mousetrap? As they say on Shark Tank, do you have an improved feature or better quality? So they have to really find, what is the gap in the market or in the product right now, and then figure out, okay, how is my product going to fill that gap? Jason, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you really covered it quite well, Nancy. It's, understanding what's out there. The only thing I would add would be anything you can identify is maybe how the customer currently isn't being serviced. That's a great spot for where you want to focus your energy to help you differentiate.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. So some of the differentiators, a place that isn't a gap in the market, as you mentioned, price point can also be another thing. That if there's a cheaper way to produce something or a cheaper product that you can bring to the market that serves the same need, I think, those are good ways to look at whether or not a business has legs, whether or not it can actually, or a business idea has legs. If somebody came to you and said, or if I came to you and said, okay, so I've checked out my competition, I know how I'm different, I know the ways in which I think I can serve the marketplace better than what is already there, what would you say, Jason, would be my next step? What do you tell businesses to do next?
Sure. Actually, something we did to keep it a little bit fun, because starting your own business is supposed to be fun, first off, as well as all of the other things that go along with it. We actually created a top 10 list of things you can look at if you're thinking about starting your own business. And you can look at that, before you've done anything past your idea or anywhere along the process. I think the list would be helpful. We cover some things like looking at your market, understanding your competitors. How do you want to run the business? We found some entrepreneurs really just want to get the product out there, and then they want to go and do something else. They want as Nancy mentioned Shark Tank before. They want the quick to come in the mail, or there's some people who really want to roll their sleeves up and say, I want to change from what I do on a day-to-day basis and make this my passion and make this what I do when I wake up every day. So those are all things that are good to ask yourself before you get too far down the path.
That's interesting. We have the same conversation with some of the people that have come to us. Do you want to be the wholesaler? Do you want to be the retailer? Do you want to sell your idea? There are so many different ways to approach. Okay, you've got this great idea. You want to bring it to market, but exactly what you're saying. What is your role? What do you foresee your role being? And it's interesting because I get asked this. We put together a volunteer advisory board for our business. Because we're a for-profit and not a nonprofit, it's not a true board. It's a volunteer advisory group, I guess, for legal purposes that we call them. And they've been tremendously valuable to me. So I asked friends that had various roles. So I have lawyers and marketing people and someone from a foundation and someone from the design aspect and someone from occupational therapy. We brought all these people together. They've been amazing in being willing to give us their time and expertise. One of the things they ask me constantly is, what part of this do I most enjoy? What's the piece of this that I really find the most fulfilling? And I'll tell you, for me, in our business, it's actually the management of staff. I really enjoy. Pumpkin Fets is an adaptive employer. And so for me, that's the piece that if I had to choose a piece to give up, like, I don't really want to do the retail. I really want to do the production, because that's the part that puts me with, you know, the employees. And so it's a really interesting question. I didn't know this before we did this. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know whether I wanted to be wholesale or retail or just sell the ideas or what it was. But it turns out my favorite part is just really the people process of managing our very particular employees. That's a good question, and we hadn't talked about before, about figuring out which part you want to do. I know that you said you would we could make the 10 points available to our audience. Yeah. So we will do that. We will actually post it along with this, so that if anybody wants to use your 10 questions, they can. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, my pleasure. Is there a point at which you recommend someone do a business plan? Do you think business plans are necessary in this space? And either one of you that wants to take that question. I don't know, Jason or Nancy.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely think a business plan is important. I would start working on that business plan almost after you answer those 10 questions, or even if you decide not to do the 10 questions. When you think you have your idea is developed and you need to take those next steps, the business plan really acts as the framework to make sure that you know what steps are next, especially if you've never run a business, or depending, you know, if you've never been in that kind of situation before. It makes sure that you go step by step and don't miss something that's critical that could affect your success. So that's definitely, I would say, you want to start that as early as possible, and I would say before you launch, if possible. That way, you know, it gives you that roadmap that once you go down the path of developing your product or developing what your service is going to be, it's all clearly defined and it's all in that document. I would encourage to go to the SBA.gov website, which is the Small Business Administration. They do have great links and samples of business plans. And I'll note there are two different types. There is a traditional business plan, which everyone's familiar with, and everyone kind of who is not into accounting usually rolls their eyes. It's just one small portion, the financials, but you do need to address them. But if you're just getting started and want to get a feel for how your business is coming together, I would encourage you to take a look at the Lean Business Plan, which is a one-page, quick document, covers about 8 to 9 different items, but it's a bulleted list. So you can sit down probably in one evening or under a week, definitely, using your couple hours every evening, and have that completed. And that gives you that first roadmap of making sure you're asking some preliminary questions that need to be answered. And then,
yeah, and you know, I would add to that, you know, having a strong business plan, it's the difference between creating a product and selling it on, just say like Etsy, and you want to build a business. You know, it's the difference between being a product or being a company. Because a business plan, I know for us, it helped us really identify our target customer. And I know that Lisa, you and Jason talked about that a lot, but it helped us think about who we really are marketing our products to, and who the ideal customer is, and what's the best way to market, and what's the best way to message and brand. And it's, you know, I don't come from a business background. I come from an educational background. Jason, you know, has the business background, but we've never launched a company before. And it does force you to consider and think about all of the aspects of how to go to market that we never would have thought of before.
It's interesting that you mentioned who the customer is. That was one of the biggest learning points for us as a business, for Pumpkin Fets. My background, I have an MBA, but I was wrong about who our customer was. And so when we first went to market, we went to market in the wrong way. And we actually spent probably a year wasting our time trying to talk to the wrong people. And it wasn't until a year later, and quite by accident, that I actually, I was at NYSOTA and met occupational therapists for the first time. Hi, and we see your son is there too. This is another part of working from home.
Yes.
We all have this. My 11-year-old is just as likely to come wandering through. Hi. You can help mom. You can help mom answer all the questions.
He's my working buddy. Yeah.
Excellent.
He's my coworker.
We all need them. But anyway, so we spent the first year talking to the wrong people. It wasn't until I got to NYSOTA and people started telling me, occupational therapists told me what my products did, that I realized, oh, hallelujah, we found our people. It was really funny. I spent a year trying to explain our products to the wrong market. And so finding your market and understanding where they are and how to reach them for us was probably the biggest learning curve. And truly, it cost us a year. It cost us a year. And once it was over, that was a tremendous advantage. But that's the other thing about being in business. I find that you have to be able to learn constantly. You have to constantly learn from the inputs that you're getting and be willing and able to pivot all the time. So we've just been talking internally about the fact that for us, this is a time of pivot. We cannot sell or ship right now based on, New York State's Executive Order 202.6. So we are doing what we can at this moment to continue to contact and maintain that connection with our market. But it's constant, it's a constant learning process. So let me ask. Go ahead.
No, I'd say he's visiting both. He didn't want to. So no, you're completely. I completely agree with you, Lisa. We are also in the process of pivoting. We're reevaluating pretty much a lot of different things we do. Right now, we have to rely on phone calls and social media a lot heavier. We can't get out and have meetings with occupational therapists who are, for our effortless art products, our main customers. Even on the design and development side of our business, we're looking at people are now in a different financial situation. So having full-blown design services may not make sense for everyone. We need to develop an alternative that is easier to allow them to maybe do more on their own with our guidance, as opposed to, as we talked a little bit before, how do you want to be involved with your business? A lot of our clients that we've worked with, they had their own, they wanted to have the idea and then wanted to turn it over kind of to a professional that was going to run with the project, where now people have more time, they may be more involved and more hands-on. So we're looking at all those things to, ultimately be able to help people and help them accomplish their goals as best as possible.
And this might be a good time to ask that follow-up question about, as you start a new business, what sorts of things do you need to be prepared for? What are those changes? What did you find, or what's your personal experience about what were the things that you didn't expect, or what should businesses be prepared for? Sure.
Well, I guess I'll speak to our experience first off with the effortless art line. We spent all of the, our effort in building the business plan and making sure everything was there, and we had packaging done and going through everything like that. And you're like, okay, whew, we made it through that hurdle. And then it comes launch day, and you have all of your materials that you put together to support launch and things like that. And then you go, okay, now what? It's kind of, and you switch modes. It's a completely different mindset from that get ready state to the execute. And now you're going through that, running the business day to day. And one of the first things you look at, I think, is a big challenge for people who are looking at online businesses that don't have that brick and mortar. So even if it's a service or a product, you don't have that street presence where people are walking by. It takes time to build up a customer base unless you've already been building content and already have social media followers and things like that. So first day, you end up like, what if the people don't come? What if no one finds us? And I think as a group of entrepreneurs and people, as more people are doing this on their own, there's more information out there that's available. It gets once again, you start asking those questions before launch instead of having to kind of go through and pivot on how do we make sure we drive traffic to our online locations.
So it's not a build it and they will come sort of approach.
Most times I would say not. Like I said, I think the alternate would be is if you happen to have a product that gets featured at the right spot and the right time, you can definitely rocket your growth. But I'd say majority of businesses, it's a day-to-day building one block in front of the other. And then the other alternative would be is if you already had a content base where you'd say been building content and then decided to add a pay service or a paid product, I think you definitely can be ahead. But even with that, that doesn't happen overnight. You've been building that content out for years and have built up your reputation. It just happens that your product is ready, has a waiting audience.
And I wanted to add just a little bit to that quickly. I don't think we fully understood how important our social media was going to be, and how influential it was going to be, and how much of our story we had to share and tell through social media and through emails and blogs, and how much you have to build that up, as new business owners. I don't think, like Jason said, I think looking back, we should have had that built up and kind of ready to go pre-launch, as opposed to launching and then going, oh, now we should be doing this. I think that was one thing. I know he's just changing rooms now. That was just one thing that was, I think, surprising to us, was just how much content in social media was going to be influential in our marketing and reach efforts.
Cool. That's interesting, because we had some internal discussions about social media. We go back and forth on social media and on its position in our business effort. So in some ways, we've looked at social media like LinkedIn. So you can't get a job with a LinkedIn resume, but you can't get a job without a LinkedIn resume. So a LinkedIn resume isn't going to get you a job, but if your resume isn't on LinkedIn, you're not going to get a job. It's sort of a chicken and egg problem. And so we've looked at social media like a necessary channel of communication to our market, but not a sales channel, if you will. So we tend, and that I don't, for better or for worse, I mean, it's every company takes a different approach, but we've used it as a communications platform, but not a sales platform. So I don't know if you all have found the same thing, or if you find that you can drive sales. We have not found you can drive sales through social media. We found you can drive communication and connection, but not sales. That's just our experience. What would you say as far as, have you had success in driving sales through social media?
It's helped us gather a strong following, so that we helped us build a base, so that when we do reach out or put something out there to our followers, it helps to drive traffic. But Jason, you could talk to this too. We don't use it as a regular sales channel for us. We use it as a way to tell our story, to share resources, to communicate, to engage, things like that.
Yeah. Yep. Do you think it'll change right now? Do you think this time? Because right now, and what we're seeing is that, well, I've been reading a lot about what's going on as far as how to reach your audience and your customer base right now. And so many people are spending so much time on social media as opposed to 2 months ago. So it may be that everything we've learned, it may be another inflection or pivot point where we all have to start doing it differently, because all of a sudden social media might drive sales. So have you all thought about a different strategy for social media because of the pandemic?
I think our strategy for the pandemic is we're trying to be a lot more involved out there, understanding that a lot of people that do follow us and other people who maybe just learning about us, their lives have changed. So we want to be out there, and it's really, we're looking to connect. We aren't looking necessarily to push, buy our products here, buy our products there. It's we all just need to know that other people are looking out for us and are thinking about us, and we all want to try to help each other. That's really what we're using our social media for. Your question as far as where will sales start being driven through social media, I think it would take another disruptor. That's just my general opinion, or some disruption of how ads go through, or maybe it's more buying opportunities. I'd rather call it that, a buying opportunity than an ad, to start driving sales during this time. Because I think there will be some kind of online platform required to help people who don't want to go to Amazon to buy everything. I don't know what that is. I think there's some interesting things that might be out there, but I don't know if they're fully developed yet.
So I don't want to like skip ahead and put everything together, but so you guys are doing an online platform. I mean, so is this, so can you want to, let's take a moment now, tell us a little bit about that. So what are you launching, and how do you see that in the marketplace?
Sure. So we launched, it's the Two Sparrows Marketplace, and our goal and our purpose was really to have an outlet, a sales channel for new products, specifically adaptive products within the therapy adaptive product market. You know, Jason and I, we went through this process of developing a product, bringing it to market, and creating our own website, going through all of that. And we want to have a place for other people like us to sell their products easily, accessibly, and it's amongst other related products as well, so that people will come to Two Sparrows and they will find the unique new products, and that they can find a number of them in one place. We wanted to have a space, like Jason said, that's not Amazon, that we're not looking to sell 20 different types of a commonly known product. We want those unique products that fill that gap, that fill that market need that you haven't really seen yet. The OTs are always wondering, oh, if only I had this. Yeah. We want to help those inventors get their products out there and be an easy sales channel for them. I'm gonna go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
No, that's perfect.
I noticed we have some questions too. So I'm going to circle back, and Robin Waxenberg, hi Robin, has asked, what's been your greatest success to date? So let's start with that one. What's been your greatest success to date?
You want to go ahead, Jason?
Sure. I'll go to last year was our first time going to the AOTA National Conference. And that was a success on so many levels. It was our first opportunity to meet a lot of different OTs that we had only talked to on social media, or we emailed back and forth because they were learning about our products. But that face-to-face connection, and just the enthusiasm of OTs in general, it's infectious. So that's a great moment, and it's just a good adrenaline boost for everybody. And it was also a time when we launched our design and development company actually at the conference, which is exciting as well, just to let OTs know that if they need some support, if they have ideas, there's somebody out there that would like to work with them, and that we're looking specifically at adaptive products. So we aren't looking to be a do-all, like kind of like a skeleton key, we can fit in every lock kind of thing. It's we're looking specifically for certain types of projects that really aim to help people.
And the next question Robin asked was, what was your greatest challenge? And maybe Nancy, you could answer that one. Your greatest challenge to date?
I think the greatest challenge is, as a young business owner, you wear all the hats. You wear all of them. You wear hats you didn't even know existed.
Yep.
So I think that would be it. You when you're starting off, you don't have the capacity to hire a team. You are the team, and there's a lot of learning on the job as you go that happens. But I think any entrepreneur or business owner has that in them, that they kind of enjoy that and they thrive off of that. and they like that type of challenging environment, and trying new things and taking a little bit of risk. And so I think we like that, but it's not that it's always easy. So there's a lot to learn and a lot to do, but I've enjoyed, wouldn't have traded the past 3 years, going on this very crazy journey, with my husband.
I totally agree. I'll tell you, it's funny. I was speaking to a group of young people in a program that's managed by a local cultural institution about a year ago. And one of the questions I was asked was, what are we likely to find you doing if we come to your office on any given day? And I laughed, because you're just as likely to find me washing the floor or cleaning out the microwave as doing anything else. And the whole place laughed, because apparently they had a whole deal about who cleans out the microwave. But my job is whatever has to be done. And every weekend, my husband and I would go into the office and clean the floor. That's part of the job. And so it is. It's everything, and it's not always glamorous. That's funny. Well, so Robin asked one other question. I don't mean to lose it, but she asked if there's anything in particular you've learned through this process that you didn't know. I'll tell you, you mentioned, Nancy, a moment ago, working with your husband. So my husband and I launched this together, and it's always, you're never sure, I guess, when you first start working with your spouse, how that's going to work out. And for us, it works really well, which is really tremendous. But I don't know that I would recommend it to everybody, because we spend pretty much 24 hours a day together now. But that was what I learned. What I learned more than anything was that, I learned, like I told you, what I loved about doing this job. What I actually love is the employee part. But the other thing I learned was that I can work with my husband, which is really great. So what would you say? What have you learned? But we'll start with Nancy, and then we'll ask Jason. So what have you learned through this process that you didn't know 3 years ago?
I would say I learned not to be so apprehensive at trying something that was outside my comfort zone. Again, I did not come from a business background. I had never made a sales call. I had never presented, a proposal. All these things were new to me, and I was very apprehensive about doing it. But I learned that even though there's something that's outside of my background or knowledge base, I can learn, I can do it. I can, as long as I take that first step and muscle up some confidence in myself, you're able to pivot, so when people say like, well, I'm an OT, I don't know this, or whoever, maybe not now, but you will, you can. I think that's what I've learned. Nice.
And Jason?
It's sort of funny, like Nancy mentioned, is like, we're kind of opposites in that, 2 things I learned. I'm a go person. So I'm already, Nancy's asking the first question, and I'm down the road. I've made a right-hand turn. So she's like, and that's one thing that I've learned is like trying to reel that back, which is still difficult for me, because it's already, the gears in my head are always going, but just so I can, she's like, well, I have no idea how we even got to where you say we are. So, working on that communication, and definitely the change. I thought was interesting, more on a personal level. How you said you're working with your husband, working with Nancy. It's kind of interesting. We've never really even like visited each other at work, aside from like, oh, drop off something, say hello. So like to see how we both focus and attack things, it's definitely been interesting, because we are very opposite as far as how that is, just based on how our careers progress. So
it's a good team, though. That's what it's clear. Like the way you talk about it, it's a good team. You bring the strengths the other person doesn't have, and the combination is a good match. So that's, congratulations on that. I'm going to circle back and get one of Shanique's questions, which is, Can you say a little bit more about competition? And I'm not sure exactly how she means this, but there's sort of a couple of ways I can imagine a competition as to how do you identify who your competition actually is for a product? Because sometimes that's hard to know. For example, if you're selling milk, it's not actually all beverages that you're competing against necessarily. It may be just other milk vendors, or it may be, if you're selling Coca-Cola, do you compete against, seltzer water? Or, you know what I'm saying? Is like, how do you figure out exactly who your competition is, and how do you watch, what is the process of figuring out who they are, and then understanding their process and how you might find that gap?
Sure.
And I'll ask Jason. I'll
yeah,
let Jason.
I think Jason didn't get a chance to talk about it.
Kind of, then there's a couple of different ways, and like you mentioned, you kind of went through the one where you're zoomed out, and maybe a good one. So if it's milk, so maybe don't even think about that you're going to sell milk. Is your customer thirsty? That's the first thing that happens with the customer.
Nice.
So, and then now they have the full breadth.
Yep.
But then, there's a lot of different questions you need to ask, and that's what I would say is keep asking the question, but phrase it a little differently, or create that scenario a little differently, because I can do something similar to that. Your customer has a bowl of cereal. Okay, now and they're thirsty.
Yep.
So now they're probably going to go to some kind of milk product. I mean,
yep.
So now you're maybe down to, nut-based or coconut or soy, and then like dairy milk. Now, and so that's where you need to, and then as part of that, be thinking in the background, what do I think makes me different? And that will also help phrase your questions in a certain way to help you get to really understanding who your competitor is. Especially if you're going to a niche, your competitor list is going to be much smaller. But if you're going to something much larger, your competitor list is going to be larger. One thing I would mention there is if your market is very, very large and you're competing against everyone, you have to worry about a little bit about being a commodity, which we know we didn't touch on. I don't want to, but that raises its own challenge. I would say that in general, if you have an idea, try to be as specific as possible. If anyone has questions on that, I don't want to take up the next 2 hours. So if anyone wants to, reach out to this post, I'll be following the post. I could try to answer as many questions related to that, but that's a whole another topic when you start really getting into understanding who your competitors are.
That's a good point. Nancy, did you have something you want to add?
No, that was perfect. That was good.
I really like the idea of understanding exactly what it is that you're trying to fill as a need, like looking at the need-based question really carefully. I think that point about commoditization is really huge, and you bring up a really good point. I know that people can get in touch with you after this if they wanted to. Absolutely. And maybe if Shanique, we can put up the contact information, that would be great, because I appreciate the fact that our audience can reach back out to both Nancy and Jason. We've got Jason at twosparrowsls.com and then Nancy at twosparrowsls.com. So I appreciate that, because commoditization, then pricing becomes everything. And so that's a whole nother kettle of worms. And if they want to reach out to you and understand more about competition, I appreciate your being willing to speak with them. I want to really quickly thank you both for being here. I realize we are now 1 minute from the end of this discussion, but you guys have been tremendous. It's been really fun to talk to you both. It was really fun to meet you in New Orleans. Thank you for doing this with us.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will, of course, be continuing to work with you all, because we really enjoy the energy that you bring to it, the ideas that you bring to this space. We'll continue to push people your direction, tell them about you as we meet them. So thank you both. we'll tell everybody that on Friday, we're doing a Friday recess at 4 p.m. for kids. This week, we have Kelly Bly from Cully Kids joining us to do wacky weekend snacks. So if you and your children or just your children are interested in doing this with us on Friday, 2 days from now, we'll see them at 4 o'clock. And Jason and Nancy, thank you and your son so much. Be well, and we'll see you both soon.
Take care. Be well, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.